Welcome back for another video about Configuration Manager, Microsoft Endpoint Manager. On the last videos, we installed and checked the distribution point. We learned a lot about the distribution point. And now it's time to talk about the second row, that's the managing point. So the distribution point, like we saw in those videos, are the file server, but how do I know which file server to access? How do I know what I need to do and when I need to do? This is the job of the managing point. The managing point basically is the first point of contact from a client or configuration manager client to know exactly what needs to do and what and where it needs to go. Do I need to go to this server or that server? Depends on, for example, if I have a multiple servers in my environment, let's say 5, 10, 15 distribution points, which one should I go? So this is the job of the managing point. Not just this, is also checking if the client, the first time the client connects, register the client, receive software update or hardware inventory, software inventory or hardware inventory, and many more things. So here on the documentation, we have here determine the site system roles for configuration manager clients. And the first one we see here is the managing point. When we are trying to install the client, we can use the managing point as a source file as well for the clients if there is no distribution point. But this is not normally the case because we already have the distribution point installed like I just did. But here does explain a little bit more about the management point. The second documentation I want to show you is the site components for configuration manager. And if you scroll here to the management point, it tells you a little bit more what the management point actually does. And you can see here, configuration manager client uses management point to locate services, find site information such as a boundary, PKI certificates, and many more things. And of course, there are plenty more documentation, and one of those is plan for site system server and roles in configuration manager. And if I scroll down here for the management point, you can see here is a role that provides policy and service location information to clients and also receives some client data. The connectivity normally is HTTP or HTTPS. It basically means you're going to use port 8 or port 443 most of the time. And if we go to the site and site system prerequisites for configuration manager, and here on the side we can see management point. What we need to have is bits and the bits extension for IIS, and of course the IIS with some extra settings on the IIS. So it's not actually a lot more than the distribution point. There is a little bit more than distribution point, but not much. And here on this communication between the point and the configuration manager, it tells exactly what ports you need to use, how to use. Normally, we are going to use, we can see here, client to management point communication is going to be port 8 or 443, HTTP or HTTPS. It does actually talk about the client authentication. It depends a lot on if you have HTTPS or HTTP. So for example here HTTPS, you have PKI, HTTP will be anonymous, but just give you a little bit more information about the communication. Finally, the ports usage. So if I scroll down here for management point, I'm actually going to search. The client communication is port 8443. It depends if it's HTTP or HTTPS, but there is another client notification channel that uses the port 10123. But if that port is blocked, it will as saying here, fall back to port 8 or 443. And also, if I scroll down a little bit more to the site server, so you can see here is similar ports that we will need to have open for the distribution point. But there is another one here. We can see here the measuring point to domain controller. So we need to have a connectivity between the measuring point and the domain controller, because some data will be published or can be published to the Active Directory environment and also DNS. So there are a couple of extra ports that should be open. Normally, those extra ports are already open because we are looking at a domain environment. So all the machines that we look at, they are in a domain environment. And we have been looking at everything connected to one database. But on the measurement point, what we can do is have a replica of the database. So it depends on, number of clients. We can actually have the data being copied to another database that's going to be, between quotes here, a read-only, a replica. And then the measuring point will connect to that database. So, and then both servers, both SQLs will replicate data between them. In this situation, what we have is offload some of the work that's done by the main SQL server to another SQL server. Again, if you have 10, 15, or 1,000 devices, 10,000 devices, you probably will not need a database replica. But if you were to start looking at 150, 200, 300, 500,000 devices, then a database replica may be a good idea. So it talks about the database replica on this documentation. And of course, because there are some accounts being used for configuration manager, everything, we can actually use some accounts, and we can see here the management point. Connection account, it talks about some of information about this. And really important, it says here, do not grant interactive sign-in rights to this account. So the whole idea is, this is a service account, it does not actually need to receive the logon access. And how the client finds the measuring point. Okay, I have, let's say, one or two or many measuring points, but how the client access and discover who is the measuring point. One of the options is through DNS. There is a service record created on the DNS, and then the client connects to the DNS and asks for that information. So in this documentation, configure client computers to find measuring point by DNS. So it explains exactly what we need to do. Also, we can pass that information forceful during the installation, connect to that measuring point. So instead of trying to find out which measuring point, and this is during the site assignment. And this documentation, how to assign clients to a configuration manager site, it does explain a little bit more about this. And the last option here would be through Active Directory. So all our clients right now, they are Active Directory on the same domain, but it could be another domain. We could publish that information. Okay, this is the measuring point. So clients will connect to the Active Directory and ask that information. For that information to exist, we need to extend the schema like we did before. So this website, Prepare Active Directory for Site Publishing, does explain what we need to do to prepare, and then later on I will show you exactly how to publish that data and how to check as well. And finally, security. So ideally, there are a few, actually. If I search here for management point, we can see ideally we are going to use HTTPS. So we are going to use the certificates to connect to the management point. And of course, we trust the certificates. This is the whole idea for the HTTPS. We also can sign, this is the inside Configuration Manager, we can sign the connectivity. So with Configuration Manager client, so it will sign any data that's being sent to the management point. Then we know that data that's being received by the management point is, between quote here, is trusted. We can also use encryption. Then we encrypt the data before we send, the client sends to the management point. And of course, nothing is complete in a configuration manager environment without logs. And the log file reference does actually show you all the logs. Here we can see management point, all the logs and where those logs are related to the management point. You can see here there is a lots of logs that we need to look at in terms of configuration manager. So I think there is a lot of information for this video in terms of management point. On the next video, we will start installing the pre-requirements for the management point. While we are not there yet, please like, share, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you have questions or comments, just leave on the comment section below. If it's a question, remember to use the hashtag #AskRaphael so it's easy for me to find. In any case, I hope to see you on the next video. Bye now.